Ago.
Bygone time. Cheers and welcome to From Behind the BarCast, the podcast for bartending, service industry, drinking in general, and public service? Question mark. Yeah. Today we are joined once again by your friend and mine, Mr. Brian West. How we doing, bud?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Dude, very well, thank you, and thanks for coming on again. The last time we spoke on this show, at least, you were a council person running for mayor. Now you have been elected mayor. Do the stakes not about coming on the show, but in general, do the stakes seem higher for you now?
No, I don't think so. I think I kind of, knew what to expect. I saw what Shirley was doing and going through, and I think I knew what to expect. Yes,
business as usual, sort of.
I knew. Yeah. Everybody's so respectful now. I'm really like I either
so that has changed.
Yeah,
Your Eminence.
I either get like people are a lot nicer than they used to be, or they're like, hey, this is Brian, he's the mayor, and they look at me like, you.
You love to hear that. So many people have been like, that's your girlfriend? Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing.
I'm glad that's a universal thing. You really? Yeah. Okay. Wonder how you did that. The reason I asked was because, coming from being a council person to, the big boy seat, not saying that all the seats aren't big boy, but the gravitas of your decision making, what you do and how you, interact with the public and, your colleagues. Does that sort of change the way you have to approach your decision making? Because in the seat you're currently in, your decision making has a lot more, influence and weight than it would, as a council person.
Yeah.
And has that changed your perspective on, do I need to take another beat before I, espouse my position on certain things?
I'm pretty cautious about making quick decisions.
So more cautious?
More cautious, yeah, absolutely. And there are some things that I guess I'm still getting used to, because they'll come to me and say, we want to, we're going to do this thing, and we're letting you know about it, and I'm like, that's great.
Oh wow, we're functioning as an actual. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm getting used to still getting used to it, but I don't. I typically don't make quick decisions unless it's really obvious, and
Sure.
so and I'm used to being put on the spot with things, so
Right.
I can handle that, and yeah.
But you're saying you're being briefed more now,
Yeah, I am.
essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also, we have, I'm learning that I have contacts with people outside of the city that I knew that was going to happen, but I just didn't realize how so many of them there were. There's so many different levels of state and federal government and the representatives in those places, and then all the agencies for the federal and the state that do, all the things that they do.
Oh, the spider web. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
Because, you're like, yeah, obviously I'm going to have to talk to people in Atlanta about, but then all of a sudden there's their departments.
Yeah. Yeah, and how government works. Government writes a law, and then they have an agency write their rules to carry that law out. And so there's a lot of rules for different things, and just something simple like everybody takes for granted that we have money coming in for sand for beach nourishment, and that's been set up and it's been worked on by people in the past, and the agency it comes through just like it's like I don't even know the name of the agency it comes through, but I was like, wow, I would have never thought that the money flows through an agency to us that way.
Are you provided staff at all to sort of do the research work or the prep work on
No.
any of that? So it's all on you to have this mental stack and understanding as it comes along, obviously, of the ins and outs and the functionality of each of these new departments that you're having to work with?
Right. Well, so city staff is knows who the contacts are and knows those people, and we have like the city has contractors for certain things that do certain things for us, and they know those contacts, and they are the ones introducing me to these people, and so the city staff really carries out a lot of everything that needs to be done. I wouldn't really need an assistant or anything.
Or any carnal knowledge of the in and out workings of those departments necessarily, because people who are on staff know all of those things. You're just
right.
kind of
and you have to kind of decide what's important for you to know, at some point. So I kind of, go through that a little bit too. But our form of government, the council is like a board, and I'm the chairman of the board, and we hire somebody to run the business for us. And so our city manager runs the business, and I try to let her do her job as much as she can and stay out of that.
Because you want to trust the people that are working for you and under you, that they're capable of doing those jobs.
Right.
Yeah, I got you. But that's very respectful.
Yeah. I mean, we have to be proactive and make sure things are done right and well. But, if we find that the person can't do the job, then for that same reason, we don't interact directly with like the department heads, because they work for the city manager. So it would be inappropriate for us to like call, the director of engineering or the director of the DPW, the fire chief, and ask for something because he's already got a role with the city manager. Our job is to create policy, and to try and fix things that, that aren't going well for us.
Yeah, you don't want to go over someone's head and be like, oh, well, I'm going to pull the trump card and be like, no, I'm going to contact the director directly. Yeah, right. That's sort of a Ace Rothstein casino situation. Don't go over my head again. We'll put you in a hole in this desert out here.
You got, you've hired the person to do this job. Let them do their job.
And I think that's number one, a brilliant way to go about it, because any industry that you're in, if you're not hiring people that you can trust to delegate those things to, which is their actual job, then it sort of gets caught up in what is your mental stack? What is your mental load of like having to wonder whether the person under you is capable or actively doing what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah. And how involved at this point are you in the people that are under you in their hiring and their?
Not at all. The city manager makes hiring decisions.
Already in place. Yeah.
So our council has decided the city manager is an acting city manager right now. So the city council has decided to do a search for a city manager. So our role is to find somebody to run the business, basically. And the current city manager is doing a fantastic job, and she's well liked. And but we have to make sure that we've picked the best person for the job. And hopefully it'll be her. If there's somebody better, I'd be very surprised, but we're going to find out.
So you're pretty happy with the current situation?
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, and that probably makes the day-to-day work life a little bit easier and better, because I was wondering, how important is it to either, number one, like your colleagues or be liked by your colleagues?
Well, I can't worry about being liked.
Okay.
I hate for that to sound callous, but
hey,
but I'm gonna.
Not everyone's for everyone.
I'm eventually gonna piss somebody off, with a decision I make.
And if you didn't, you'd be pandering to
right,
yeah.
right. I'd be wiffle waffling on everything, right? But I do very much want the group that we have to work together, to get along with each other and work together, even though we don't all agree, philosophically with the way things should be done. Right. And that's what makes a good board. That's what makes a good group. When you have diversity and thought and opinion, then everybody's not doing the same thing. So
it takes a village.
Yeah. And we have that. I think, we're very fortunate to have the group that we have. They're new, they're energetic, they have lots of questions, they want to get things done. We made an incredible, almost 5-page wish list of all the things that we'd like to see happen for the city. So we're working through, which one of those to tackle first, while at the same time working on what's already going on, And so it's very dynamic, and it's a great group, and I'm happy to be working with them.
Well, that's a good piece of the puzzle, and through the idea of it takes a village, so there's a lot of moving parts. So council is one, other members sitting inside City Hall, also the general public, the citizenry, as it were, and when it comes to, so typically in most smaller dynamic governments like a Tybee or whatever, typically from the citizenship, a lot of the influence would probably come from wealth, I would think, right? So like the wealthier people, they get together, they like a certain candidate for whatever position. They probably have that candidate's ear in some sort of way because it is a small community. That candidate gets elected, and then all of a sudden this section of the citizenry has the ear of that elected official. But here on Tybee, I think it's slightly different. Obviously, that wealth is a factor, but I think down here, if you're second or third generation Tybeanian and your family's been down here forever, I think that holds as much influence in terms of what the public wants versus what the city will do for them and the exchange in that. Have you found the push of the influence from old time Tybee people in terms of how people make decisions when it comes to policy and things like that?
There's definitely two groups. There's the old time Tybee people that have lived here forever, and they should be respected for that for the his. Everybody loves Tybee because it's it's a cool place, and it has it's quirky a little bit, so people want to preserve that. They come here, they move here, they love it, they like it, and they want to keep it that way. But at the same time, times are changing. There's new ways to do things. There's improvements we can make. So it's a careful balance, between satisfying the old school Tybee that we all cherish so much, and the new people that are coming in. And I hate to say new because some of them have been here, 20 years.
But if you ask a local, what's new? Anything.
I've been here 13 years.
You're still new, bro. Yeah.
Well, and I kind of hate that that's a thing too, because
I know
it's how long have you been here?
Yeah.
But the people that are coming in are like very talented, very knowledgeable retirees from whatever industry they worked in.
Yeah.
And they can serve on our boards, they can serve on our Y boards and our TEMA boards and all that stuff. The Historical Preservation Commission, and they run committees like a business. And we, I went to our GMA conference in Atlanta. We all went last week, and our city is just like so far ahead of a lot of places around Georgia with our population and our capabilities and our technology, and I feel very fortunate, to be here. I met a lady a year ago when I went, who, the school bus driver didn't come pick up her child, and she called the school board and complained, and they said, we don't have any school bus drivers, and she was the mayor, and she was like, well, I'm gonna fix this, and she couldn't find it either, so she drives the school bus now. So,
it takes a village, baby.
Yeah, and I thought that was just fantastic, and we have a fair amount of money, and we have lots of knowledgeable resources, to help us get things done.
Well, even without a lot of show prep, before we did this thing, you were segueing beautifully into every question I was thinking to ask, because when you were talking about bringing the new blood, if we call it that, where people wouldn't necessarily respect it because it's like, oh, they don't know the culture of Tybee or whatever. When their pushback on new blood is like, hey, wouldn't you rather have like a fresh mind, an outside perspective? But I see there's a division between, there's people that view our old-fashioned or old-school mentality down here on Tybee and the way things are done as like, oh, it's cute and old-fashioned. And then there's another that says that's not old-fashioned, that's outdated. And I think a division that's happening is, okay, so if you're thinking about fiscally, a person with interest in Tybee, if they own some property and stuff like that, there's a definite chance for them to, make money off of property and, renting and things like that. And then there's the sect that's like, well, I don't want Tybee to change at all, but you can't progress and move forward without a balance of both. How does it affect you in terms of your decision making on like what's more important, keeping our unique culture, which will change if it's only like new money coming in, looking to buy property and rent it to, just cash out, or keeping the essential things of what makes Tybee what it was, which won't be like that anymore if it becomes just a big bastion of, rental properties and stuff like that. Like where does the balance lay for you?
I mean, I'm conservative. I don't want things to change very much if possible.
Yeah.
But when I see opportunity to make something better, I'm going to have to gonna have to carefully consider that.
But does bringing more income make it better, or because the reason people would come here in the first place, either to visit or to own property, because like you said, people will visit here and be like, oh, I love this place, I want to be a part of it. But then as that turns over year, and it becomes less about the quirkiness because the quirkiness gets pushed out.
Yeah. I would hate to see us become a place where income is important. I mean, that.
Yeah.
That's.
But I mean, it seems like it's skewing in that way. And
but people have the right to buy property, so what?
No, understood. Yeah, understood. It's just, I realize that what makes us quirky is not, people spending money. It's the people that you see, at the bar stool next to you or on the beach next to you. And if those people don't exist anymore, then the charm is kind of gone, I would think.
Yeah, well, and my wife was looking at next door, and there was somebody complaining about there's too many bars on Tybee, and we were like, "What are you talking about?" And then
did you get the wrong pamphlet for the wrong city whenever you came down here?
And then there was a comment down the way that said something about all the bars there were prostitutes sitting at the bars or something.
I mean,
no,
not exactly wrong.
And Becky goes, I was sitting at the bar at Huckapoo's last night. I was having a bowl of broccoli soup, for God's sakes.
She's like, you could have at least said high dollar prostitute.
Really?
Come on, man.
That's right. And she was wearing this white furry vest thing. And I said, were you wearing that prostitute vest while you were over there?
She got home, she threw it away, and you're like, honey, why are you throwing that vest? I'm never wearing this again.
No, she calls it that too, just to get my prostitute vest.
The one night I was wearing it.
Yeah.
Real quick shout out. So Firemaker, they've sponsored this episode, and this brand deal wouldn't have been able to happen without my man Michael O'Connor, who is very capable. He's their man on the street here.
Baby
Mike O'Connor, and I'm having the Sun Vibes by Firemaker. It is a alcoholic coconut water. We have some lime sparkling water, which is a amazing mixer for your vodka, which I'll probably be having after the show.
The plug.
Just a little plug for you. Visit firemakerbeer.com, and you can follow them on their socials at firemakerbeer. In the seasons of your life, through college and everything, has your preference for what you drink changed at all?
I went through a season of life where I couldn't drink bourbon.
Because
it was we had so much of it at Georgia football games that I got to where I just couldn't do it anymore.
That's fair.
But
That's fair.
I've reacquired the taste.
bourbon,
yeah. And I'll usually get a bourbon and water if we go somewhere. And the other night we were somewhere and I ordered bourbon and water, and the bartender put bourbon and Coke in there and gave it to me, and I took a sip, and I've tasted a football game. I mean,
it was like the Ratatouille moment. You're automatically brought back.
I had to sit it down and go, wow, that takes me back to my teens.
We lost 28-7 in 1994.
It was just like a whoosh.
Yeah.
The Jim Donnan days.
But I didn't waste it.
Of course not, yeah. That's a jolt. You're like, I think I'm getting a bourbon and water, which I didn't realize that, but we have the same taste. Well, I used to drink tequila a lot, but then what I didn't know was I thought my gas problem and my stomach issues were gas or something else. So, and I sort of began to realize that I always had these problems when I was hungover and I would eat like shit and whatever. So I thought it was gas. So one day I drank a bunch of pickle juice thinking that would help. Then I drank an oatmeal smoothie with raw oatmeal in it, and it put me in the hospital.
Oh, no.
Because I had an ulcer.
Oh, no.
So when you put raw oatmeal blended onto an ulcer, it's like razor blades.
Onto a vodka ulcer.
Yeah. Fermentation?
No, just the physicality of it literally scrapes across. So I've been on the bourbon ever since then. Wow. Bourbon and water, yeah. Bullet bourbon specifically. Did you ever work service industry at all?
Yes, I worked at Baskin Robbins in the Oglethorpe Mall when I was in
Really?
high school. Yeah, it was a great job. It was. I mean, and
all the ice cream you could eat.
No, he had cameras. He Way
Even
back then, they had
then.
cameras, yeah. Because you give away too many scoops, those little tablespoons, and the owner gets worked up and comes in. So you have to watch those. But yeah, it's great. People need to work in the service industry from time to time.
Yeah, I think it's like Israel. You have to do a military service for like 2 years.
Yeah.
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 In the U.S., I think you should have to work in the service industry at least a year or two just to understand.
It's humanizing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, because like not to espouse the values of working service industry, like it's some noble thing or whatever, but there is a crash course in understanding the interaction between service and serving, and it gives you a little. It doesn't humble you, but it makes you understand, like, hey, the person on the other side of the bar, the whatever, is a person too, and it's not, and it can translate into every other aspect of whatever industry you're in. Because if I think about the people that I've worked with and the importance of how they conduct themselves and what they do to me, is 50% is probably how well did they do their job. 20% is how much they care about their job, and the other 30% is, are they a good hang? Are they cool to be around? Can I spend 8 to 10 hours a day with them in an office?
Yeah.
Do you find have your work hours gone up since?
Yeah.
So you're spending a lot of time with a lot of the same people. Do you put sort of the same gauge of the importance on how does it matter to you more? It's like, I really like this person, so it's easier to interact than if I didn't like them at all, but I agreed with them on everything.
It's interesting because I think my role is to bring that group together and put them in a spot to make the best decision they can. I don't really make a decision unless they can't decide. So it's different now. When I was on council, I was trying to convince people to vote in the way I wanted them to vote, and to compromise and work things out. And now, that's really up to them. And like I said, I call it if they can't decide. So it's a little bit different dynamic than
would it be
before.
inappropriate for you to attempt to influence them on the way to?
Well, of course I'm gonna say what I think.
Sure. But not with the intention of persuading them in any way, because that dynamic would be a little inappropriate.
I mean, if it's important to me, I would probably try to persuade.
Sure.
Well, I guess that's not fair either, because it's all important. But I don't know. I just haven't been in a position yet where I strongly disagreed with what was going on. And in some cases, the persuasion is going to have no effect because you already know the person's stance, and you're not going to change their mind. So they're going to do what they're going to do regardless of what everybody else thinks.
Is there ever a time you thought you could change someone's mind? Honestly?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I didn't think that would be even on the table at all.
Yeah.
Like, you could talk and bullshit with each other, but just like arguing on social media or anything like that, it's like, I'm probably not going to, change this person's mind.
Well, yeah, I mean that happens a lot too. But so for example, we had a topic, and I'm not going to get real specific because the person will know what I'm talking about. But we had a topic that somebody had made up their mind on that needed to be fixed until they heard that there were other opinions in the community that disagreed with it, and then they were like, oh, okay, I thought everybody thought this way, and so and they kind of changed their stance a little bit because they found out they weren't the majority.
Wow, I have such a bleak view of that decision making because, I mean, it makes a little more sense that they were like, oh, they were just uninformed that the public or whoever or the majority felt one way. I didn't think that would have a factor, except for whether they intended to be elected again to please the constituency, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I had a very bleak view.
We've got a good 2 years where we have to start policing.
Right? It ain't election season yet, baby. We're in the salad days right now. Yeah,
that's right.
Well, that was just one of the dynamics that I wondered about, because in terms of people being informed on what they think the public wants and how much that influences their decisions, I would just think that I'm just so used to having people of a mind that like they've made up their mind, and all the talk, all the discussion, all the back and forth is just it's it's fluff just to get to the vote.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly perceptive. I already know that if we have 4 people that have made up their mind, and I know them, and I know whether or not I can talk to them, that there's really, there's not a lot you can do except let them do what they're going to do.
So does reason work better, or does giving them the knowledge that the public wants it more than they think? Which is the most powerful tool?
Well, public knowledge of what the public wants has been effective.
Yeah.
But we always use, especially but amongst themselves, they always use reason to try to come to a middle ground, on things. So they're both persuasive, but I guess it depends upon the person.
Sure.
Yeah, how they work.
I've just not with specifically like Tybee politics, but reason is probably the last thing that ever affects anyone's decision making, in terms of people that I deal with personally.
Yeah.
So that's just why that's why I have this bleak view of how, things come together like that.
I had 3 kids, and we ended up with 3 extra kids, which I very much appreciate that experience in my life. But you learn to think about what, if we do this, what's going to happen next? What's going to be the outcome of what we're thinking about doing here? So I try to think about that, and then maybe if they're not aware of what that outcome could be, say this might happen if we try that, and
I know you feel this way right now, but you're not thinking about what
yeah, or it affects this other
implication.
thing,
Sure, yeah.
that it's going to mess that up if we do it that way. And so, but like I said, there's certain topics, short-term rentals. People have made up their minds on short-term rentals, and if there's 3 or 4 people that agree on what the ordinance should be, then there's not going to be much persuasion there. When I was on council, I was able to work with Monty, and he was very cooperative and very agreeable, and got us to what I think is a very fair set of ordinances
for
short-term rentals.
Short-term? Okay.
Yeah. There's a 1 or 2 things I would change, but they're not significant. But other people refuse to do that.
What are the cliff notes on those?
Like for example,
Like a cap or something? Like,
well, no, we kind of have, it's capped now. So,
Okay.
The one thing that's on the agenda this week is being able to transfer. There was a big uproar about people who have lived here their whole lives, their parents have lived here their whole lives, and they want to be able to pass their house to their kids and let their kids rent it if they need it to keep it.
if it's already as a STVR.
Right.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. If the kids, if they want to keep it in the family and they have to be able to rent it to be able to do that, then we wanted them to be able to keep their family home.
That seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Monty agreed with that too, and he was willing to make that change.
Oh,
Well,
so Monty's more on the side of like less STVR.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so
I just want to give some context.
But
Yeah, gotcha.
this session we have this week we have on the agenda to take away the right to transfer, which is something that we worked as a compromise, to make happen.
Yeah.
So
Right. Between coming from a council person to mayor, what have you noticed just within City Hall has been the hot button issues versus with the people inside City Hall versus the hot button issues with the public, and how different are they? Like, if you were to say your top 2 concerns from the council and mayor versus top 2 concerns of citizens, do they align?
I think our citizens felt like we've had the short-term rental battle now, and it's settled, and we're gonna make it work with what we have, but I think council is wanting to keep that alive, that we're gonna make changes to it, and I think one of the most important things to council, and I think to the community, is our future long-term water supply and the infrastructure of our water system and sewer system and our stormwater system. So the changes are coming up for that. I don't know, a lot of people probably don't think about being able to turn the tap on, and have
Sure.
fresh water. But with all the industry that's being built around us,
Well, what's the inherent issue with the water supply? Is it because we would have to borrow from other places?
Well, right now we get our water from the Floridian aquifer,
Okay.
and there's a belief that the continual deepening of the channel causes salt intrusion into the aquifer.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and we are seeing salt intrusion. That's mostly happening north of us in Hilton Head, but
But you think it's going
but
to...
it could come down
Trickle
it
down?
should come down this way if they keep doing that. And with we tried drilling down to the crustaceous aquifer, the well imploded, the pipe bent. I don't know what happened, but
That was a few years ago, right?
Yeah, it was. And the lawsuit was settled on that, and now we're trying to decide, is that really the best way to go? We could run a pipe from Savannah, but with all the industry and all the growth coming into southeast Georgia,
We're outrunning our abilities to supply water to these businesses.
right? And Savannah's maxed out on what they can take out the river, so they're looking at a huge upgrade to be able to provide more. And then the Hyundai plant is the estimation is it's going to make the Floridian aquifer drop like 10 feet from the massive amounts of water they're going to consume.
They're building a city out there.
They're building the plant is bigger than Tybee.
Yeah.
It's incredible. But so anyway, there's suggestions on ways to do it, and we're going to solve it. It's we just have to decide what I prefer. Taking getting as fresh a water as we can out of the river. I know it's going to be very salty, and desalinating this. We live on the ocean, and desalinating that. But the water is murky, and it'd be a heavy filtration
But
process.
what is the desalination technology at right now? I didn't think it was close enough to, have any real, impact on us getting water.
Well, it's emerging. There's more and more companies that are providing that service to cities our size, and so there's options for getting that out there. And the cruise ships operate on 10,000 people on a cruise ship.
Right.
Operate on desalinated water. Of course, their benefit is they're out in the ocean, so they can dump the saline back into the ocean, and it doesn't affect anything. We would have to pump ours out somewhere, to get rid of that.
And probably the further out in the ocean you are, the easier it is to desalinate. There's not a lot of other stuff in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we would have to draw from out there, and yeah, that might be the answer too. That option and of course that takes more energy. That process takes more energy as well. So, but one of the things we're going to do, all that aside, is decide what we're going to have to decide what we're going to do. What we're going to do going forward for fresh water supply for us.
Do you think that would be accomplishable within, even if you just did a 2-year tenure, would that be accomplishable, having something set, something decided upon within
Yes.
that period of time?
Yes, all of council is very interested in this topic. They're ready to get the information we need and make a decision on it.
And
Now we won't actually have it in 2 years,
But the decision will be
but the
made,
decision
the
will be
budget
made.
will be
Yeah,
allocated.
the gears will be working. Yeah.
And will that carry over?
Well, when you get a certain amount of money into it,
Right.
So I guess
Yeah.
it depends upon how far along we get with it.
Sure, yeah.
And they're going to make it. That's one of those decisions that it's not left or right or property rights or anything like that. It's just a basics. What's the most effective way for us to do this job over the long term?
But it's probably hard to drive public interest in something like that. So is it easier to get something like that done because there won't be as much public, even though the public should be more concerned about whether they're having fresh water to drink, obviously.
Yeah.
But they're going to dig in more to, like property rights and things like that.
We assume our government's going to take care of that basic stuff for us.
Right. Yeah. So yeah.
So, and that's our jobs.
You signed up for it.
In the realm of, and I'm no journalist, and don't claim to be, but in the realm of political journalism, and I'm sure now you probably have to field a lot more interviews than you did before. From the outside looking in, I sort of view it as like the dog chasing its tail, because I could ask you anything. I could, even if it's a black or white answer, black or white question, but no matter what I ask or what we could talk about, you don't have the iron hand to make a decision and say, yes, this will be done. No one does. So it's hard to ask questions and
you don't want anybody to have that authority, do you?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Ostensibly, we work in a democracy, but a lot of times it might not, feel that way a lot of times. But so in this conversation with you, when people know that I'm interviewing you, they're like, "Hey, ask about this, ask about that." I'm like, "Look, the thing that I can tell you is if I ask Brian about anything, he's going to have an answer for it. He's not going to be like, oh, uh-oh, I wasn't expecting to be asked this." But also, I understand the futility of trying to pin something down when it's something that you don't necessarily have the ultimate control over. Have you found in your interaction with journalists or anyone like that, has the dynamic changed of what they expect to get from you during an interview about hot button issues or non-hot button issues?
Well, yes, because I didn't do that before. I mean, the pure fact that I didn't ever, provide a reporter information on what's important to our council and our city and the things that are happening, in our council, and our city. So, it's different just because I'm not used to being in that role and answering those questions. But that said, I think I've been able. There have been a couple of times when they asked me like about a topic, like for example, and I know more about this now, but when we had our first council meeting, the director of the Historical Preservation Commission came up with their proposal to add a new Center Island historic district. And the next day, and it's already been paid for and approved. She was just letting us know that it was being sent off for approval on the national level. And the next day, the reporter called me and wanted to talk to me about it. And I had no idea what they were.
I mean, this is
it
the
was.
first time I'm hearing about it. But
Yeah.
Center Island, does that mean like where they have that memorial at Memorial Park?
It's 6th to 12th Street, east of Butler.
Okay.
Butler and east of Butler.
And what's the proposal? It's supposed to be a...
So when Tabby was developing and see, when the reporter called, I didn't know any of this. So she would ask me questions, and I'm going, yeah. And she said, "I'll use something. Don't worry about it." But in 1923, the road opened to Tabby, and it brought in the classic beach cottage style home that was developed in that part of the island.
Okay, yeah,
From 23 to like 50.
Yeah,
whatever,
no,
right?
I got you. Yeah,
and we just happened to be in one of our home was built in 1930, so we just happened to be in a house like that. Traditional open underneath, porches all the way around, wood, no insulation.
yeah. Everything was on stilts here for a long time.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
beautiful.
Because when the hurricanes come in, you gotta, you don't want to flood out your bottom.
That's right. Yeah. And then there were a couple of churches. There were some other buildings that were important to that district. And the Historical Preservation Commission, they just want to encourage people to try and preserve that house if you can. Can we relocate it if you don't want it, or what can we do to try and keep that part of our history alive?
Yeah, because I've seen some old, buildings or structures be shipped across the island on a truck.
Yeah.
Which I understand. I used to work in refurbs downtown, and the way to keep your historical status was if you kept X% of the original building materials, which I get. There is a cultural thing. It's like, hey, this was the first settlements down here. Like, it's important to keep that. But a lot of it was the resale value is so much higher if it was kept underneath that blanket of, oh, it's historical.
Yeah.
But on Tybee especially, though, because the barracks used to be down here and all those things.
Yeah, and there's a
And the
tax
forts.
credit thing too. You
Right, yeah.
get tax credits for preserving, and you can, I don't know all the details. You can resell your credits and stuff.
Oh, okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Oh,
Yeah, that's...
But there's a whole nother market, for that. But
So code enforcement down here, and it was originally code enforcement just started like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe.
yeah, so code enforcement I ran for office in 2019, and it was an idea whenever the short-term rental argument was becoming more part of our community. The argument was that if we could just make people behave in the homes that they're in, then we wouldn't have to worry about making ordinance for short-term rentals. And so
So the neighbors wouldn't be pissed off about what's happening in the short-term rentals.
Right. We could hire, 3 or 4, ordinance people. Code enforcement people that would be the ones that go to the house and say, you're too loud, you're going to get a ticket.
That was the original incentive of the code enforcement? Okay.
Yeah. And then, it's worked really well, and it wasn't expected, but I'm glad it did work out this way. Now they pretty much take care of anything that we don't necessarily need the police for. Police, like administrative type things. So dogs on the beach and glass on the beach and those things are just like administrative fines that people pay. And if it's something criminal, then they get the police involved.
Right. So is code enforcement, is it on a on-call basis? Like if they get a call that there's glass on the beach, or are they patrolling?
They patrol. They also go. They have a massive camera system on the beach now, and screens where they can see everything that's happening everywhere on the beach. So if they see a dog, or if they see smoking, or if they see a bottle, they can send somebody, to go check it out.
Does that carry over to litter?
Yep, litter too. Yeah, and they were, they had some growing pains, because I think everybody's heard about, when they were giving people tickets for having dogs in their yards, in their own yards, if they weren't on a leash, and so there's little PR things to work through there. In my opinion, code enforcement, we want clean streets. We don't want to look at dilapidated houses. We want to take care of things like that. But simple things like, dogs in the yard, and just.
Do you think that was a justification for their jobs, sort of thing? Maybe being a little overzealous, like, hey, we don't have much to do on a Wednesday
and it was
February.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And maybe so. I don't know. And it was fairly new. We might have had fairly new people that were learning their way.
No, understood. But I just want your opinion on because none of the citizenship, I don't think, would be against any code enforcement if it was, hey, someone's throwing trash into the water. Like, please go and stop that.
Yeah.
All right. The law is we don't need dogs on the beach. Fine. Let's enforce the law. But then as it trickled into, someone's in their yard with their dog off a leash, that seems like an overreach.
Yeah, me too.
And it seems like a justification of a job. Like, if we're not doing anything, on a Wednesday in February, like,
yeah,
how are we going to justify our paycheck, sort of thing?
Well, and then especially if you ask an officer, to be lenient or to not look at this or whatever, their job is to enforce the law. That's what they do.
And especially as code enforcement, not being law enforcement, is even more of a thankless job.
Yeah.
Because they're not looking at you as an authority, like, they're not a cop.
Everybody argues with them.
Oh, 100%.
Everybody argues with them.
God.
So why would you expect them to give you any sort of break?
They go put their ankles in the water with their cigarette. They're like, I'm outside the smoking zone now. I mean, they're treated terribly. It takes
That takes
good character. Yeah.
Well said.
Will code enforcement have any interaction with sound ordinance things?
Yeah.
And what would be their capacity
they
in
handle that for sound?
Yeah.
They would, if there was a complaint, and that's another ordinance that we may consider. But if there's a complaint, you go to the person's home that's complaining, and
I'm saying for businesses.
Right. If they will be complaining about a business.
You got okay,
right.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And
sorry.
so you go to their home and you measure the decibel levels. The police have the right equipment.
Yeah.
Some people want to say like use their phones that have a decibel app or something, and those
not accurate.
Yeah.
No.
So the police come and they'll report and say, it's 80 decibels, and they get out. The police got there with their equipment and it's below the 65 or whatever it's supposed to be. They were talking about changing the ordinance to make it where they measure it at the property line of the business now instead of at the complainant's home. Personally, to me, there's not much difference there. It's still with the decibel level below the decibel level that it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be, I think, 75 at the property line and 65 away from the property line. So I don't know the point of that ordinance unless I just don't understand it completely. So yeah, that's the way.
But I mean, falling on the side of, hey, I don't want to be bothered here at my house with loud music or whatever. But within reason, you have to understand that like things are going to be loud.
Yeah, but I mean, to me, that ordinance is very clear. If this is the number.
It just doesn't seem like it's clear though, because I don't know if it's a training issue, like because if you can call and question the person taking the reading, like, oh, well, what kind of training have they had? And it's like, it kind of doesn't matter. The instrument is the instrument. The reader is the reader, but you can still argue on both sides of it.
I mean, we have to rely on the code enforcement person saying this is the reading I got, and I think one ticket's been issued because the reading was over what it should have been,
Right, yeah.
like in the past year. So, they're using they're not using they're not just thinking.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
This is loud.
Yeah. They're using the instrument.
That's what I'm saying.
So,
The instrument's the instrument. Yeah.
yeah. And our code enforcement has actually continuously maintained that instrument in locations to get readings over time. And
Yeah, you have to calibrate constantly. Yeah, just like anything. Yeah.
And they've found that the businesses are consistently under the level that they're supposed to be under.
Hopefully. And I mean, because especially down here, depending on where you are and whatever night of the week it is, things ebb and flow, and some people are going to be in a bad mood and get pissed about one thing. And like I said, depending on where you're on the island, people have certain issues with certain things. They won't complain about 100 people walking down their street yelling, but if they hear an acoustic guitar, like, 30 meters away, then there's all of a sudden going to be a problem with it. Yeah. Do you think, how much, now as mayor, are you shielded a little bit from having to concern yourself with like the minutia of things? Do you sort of not take into account so much of the smaller things because you have to think big picture?
I do try to focus more on the big ticket items that are important to the island. Like we talked about water, like controlling the inflow of people to the island during unpermitted events. How do we get control of that? Having money for beach renourishment. We're likely going to build a new emergency management shelter over the over the fire station. The government's given us a grant to pay for most of it, and so having that for when the storm comes, and then knowing who to talk to for the things we need, outside of our government is important too.
So unpermitted events, I would be remiss.
I know I
not to
brought
talk
that up,
about.
right?
I mean, we were going to get to it at some
said
point, but so what's the current feeling about Orange Crush?
We have several different promoters, all promoting different things on the same weekend, or on the same 2 weekends. One of the promoters is trying to get a permit for food trucks to make it some type of an event that people would have an activity.
Something to do besides just be on the beach.
Yeah. And the permit, the cost of the permit to make that happen is incredibly expensive.
We've never had food trucks down here at all. We don't have any. I've never seen a permit being given for mobile food because Gerald's, or it used to be Gerald's, now it's Zunzi's, whatever.
Yeah.
He built a structure around his chuck wagon.
Yeah.
Because you have to have bathroom. It's an ordinance down here. You have to have bathrooms in a structure.
Right. I think it's like you can get a permit for one, but it's like a limited permit. You can come for a day, or
like a day or
something
two.
Like that.
Yeah, gotcha.
So they can do that, but and that's great. The effort, the intention is great. To have something like that, but it doesn't control the people that
are coming down.
Right.
And who would spearhead that? Who would put themselves on the chopping block to be like, oh, we want this event to go on, so I'm going to try and get a permit for these food trucks because
they make money off of it.
Okay.
They most of them don't even live in our state. They charge, how it works. They charge people for things that don't happen. They say there's going to be a pool party at this address, and the police break it up and send everybody home.
Yeah.
And they get bored and go out and fight on the beach, and and
when there's nothing to do.
The other thing, when
there's
ask,
nothing to do.
Right, when they ask the city for a permit for an event, we prefer a more family-oriented type of an event. Even Pirates Fest has a family-oriented thing to it,
But it's also not concealed, but confined to like the big parking lot down there on the other end of the island.
Yeah.
You have a stage. There's music happening. There's something to focus on. There's vendors.
There was a parade.
Right.
Yeah. And
There's events. It's not just an open. Hey, come to a place
yeah.
and see what happens.
And if the city's going to give somebody a public space, a parking lot, to do something in, we want any citizen to be able to, go in and use that space if they want.
Do you think that would be the way forward? Be like, hey, if you want to have a DJ or a music act, have a DJ or a music act that is on this stage in this parking lot. Have vendors down there to sell food or whatever.
Yeah.
With that, yeah.
But I mean, one group has rented the pier, and they're going to have a fashion show on the pier. The whole thing, it's just the whole logistics of getting the people down here for those types of events, especially when the typical crowd we get for that is so unruly and so attention seeking. Of course, not all of them, but there's that element in there.
But the majority, for sure.
Yeah. It just makes the people that want to come can't get here. That does nothing for the city other than cost money.
Yep.
And it's just a bad experience for everyone, and except for the promoter who makes some money off to getting people to come somewhere else, not his house.
Exactly. And the precedent hasn't already been set of like, oh, there's a functionality, there's a thing that you're coming to do. The precedent has been set that, oh, everyone just show up and let's see what happens. And it's like, well, obviously nothing good is going to happen.
Yeah.
There's no focus on, hey, we're coming down because you're going to see this act play on the stage, or you're going to come down to, buy clothes or food or whatever from these vendors.
Yeah. And we could create a zone where there's a stage and there's bands and you pay to get in, and there's activities and something to keep everybody occupied.
Yeah, but that's not on you guys. Like, you're not the ones.
Right. So
yeah.
But if somebody was willing to do all that and put the time and effort into it, that would probably be something the city would get behind.
But I think it's so far gone now that there's no turning back from. It's still, I mean, it's almost a spiteful thing at this point.
It is. And when I'm talking to legislators about this and about how to handle it, the common response is, well, they ended it in Myrtle Beach, and they ended it in Buckhead, and they're ending it in Miami Beach, and for some reason here the attitude isn't, let's end this, until now.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And we're going to end this. This isn't going to be the destination for that anymore.
Because the public opinion would be at some point like, oh, you're marginalizing people because of their race or whatever, and it's so far past that now.
Yeah.
And like I said in our last conversation on this podcast, it's like there's it exists in every culture. Like, people come down to Tybee and are shitty. They're not the best guests, But particularly on those Orange Crush weekends, it is purely an exercise in defiance. We're trashing the beach. They don't like us. They don't want us. And for some reason, we've even though the citizenry down here on Tybee, especially, for whatever their initial reason was for not liking this event, still it never came to, hey, we're going to end this, because it just does nothing for anyone. But how do you end it? I mean, let's be real.
There's going to be so much police presence here that it's going to be really difficult to have a good time.
Because before, we've pipelined the streets, to try and cut traffic off where it's like, trickling into and off of the island. That caused as many problems as it handled. But I mean, what can you do?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're gonna have the same setup we did for the second and third events that happened last year, where there'll be 2 lanes on Butler. There'll be a very large police presence, and there's other things that are planned, but the police chief doesn't want to give away everything that's planned. So tactically.
Sure.
So,
but also on their side, they don't really show their hand on when they're actually going to come down.
Yeah,
that's another thing that's sort of in flux. Like,
yeah, you can look at the promotions and see when they've timed their events. Their supposed events that are going to take place, so you can kind of guess around that. But it's almost always a Saturday. The rental companies are already not renting. the businesses aren't going to be open for them. I mean, some may, but
Yeah.
it's just they're coming to nothing.
I think it's essentially been that way for a while now, though. But I don't think that's had whether businesses were open or not would have such an. They're like, oh darn, the Windrose didn't open when I came.
Yeah.
So just to finish off here, what have you, in terms of your opinion on how you thought things would go before and after being elected? Do you feel confident in the people around you and your colleagues that reason will rise above all?
No.
so
we don't all reason the same way, right?
Understood. Yeah. So what's the tack that you have to take now?
My goal is for collaboration and us all to understand where we're trying to go with things. A lot of times, somebody has an idea that we should do this thing, and they don't understand that something else is going on, or there's another component, or other people don't think that way. They have another idea. So as much as we can work together and share ideas and collaborate about where we want to go, I think the more effective we'll be. And we're not gonna make everybody happy, but we're also not going to be completely on one side and completely on the other side. If we're rational with each other, if we reason together, we should be able to make decisions that are what's best for the island, and not too divergent.
And the inherent problem is with any sort of reasonable argument is obviously it's going to piss someone off. And it's like, hey, listen, man, we have to understand that everything can't go everyone's way every time.
Well, and we also don't want to see a lot of drastic change, and away from our direction. We if it's going complete away from our direction, that's not good. It makes you unhappy. People start to panic. One little thing here or there, we can learn to live with. So again, that's why I think, and we are very diverse in the way we think about things, and I'm hoping that everyone will stop and consider what other people have to say, before we force our own hand.
But you don't feel that that thing currently that people are trying to force anything, especially within your colleagues.
It's kind of early to say because we've only had one. We're going to have another meeting this week where some things were on the agenda that I didn't necessarily agree with, and a couple of them, like for example, there was one ordinance that we hadn't asked staff how they were going to be able to to carry this thing out, and when staff heard about it, they came back and said, "Wait a minute, this isn't going to work because of whatever.
We can't implement it because of this A, B, and C." Yes.
Right. So we took it off the agenda because now we need to talk to staff more about how we can do it to make it work.
Is that something that wouldn't have typically happened before?
We should always, and Shirley would always say that, especially when I would put stuff out. She was, "Have you talked to staff about this?"
Yeah.
And I would be like, "No, I just want my thing."
Yeah, right. Yeah. This is a positive change, though. At least staff has the the wherewithal to be like, "Hey, look."
Does a mayor have a chief of staff of sorts, like somebody you brought along with you on this journey?
No, but no.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's not. I mean, it's not a full time. It's not supposed to be a full time role. And all the like chief of staff things, I think that person would do are handled by the staff that we have. Okay. So, yeah. So it would be nice, I guess. But
I didn't know if you maybe had a Paxton in your hip pocket who would kind of help.
You don't want me in your hip pocket.
I mean, I thought about getting somebody to help me with emails and things like that, but then I was just like, well, no, they're not going to say it the way I want to say it. So, it's not that big.
Oh, that clerical work, I can't imagine. The typing, which is another reason Michael O'Connor is so good, because he answers texts much faster than I ever would. That's why he is a value to you, Firemaker. So do you feel optimistic?
I'm very encouraged. Yes, I'm very encouraged by the level of energy we have with the council right now. I imagine it's probably going to fade over time, but they're new people, fresh ideas, things we want to accomplish, and I like it. I like the energy right now.
I agree with you, and I'm glad that you're the guy up there.
Thank you.
No, it's really nice, just to have like a fresh perspective and someone who isn't jaded already. I mean, time will tell, but but we will see. Thank you guys again for listening this week. You can find us on Instagram from Behind the BarCast. If you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, it's youtube.com/From Behind the BarCast. Mayor Brian West, thank you again for coming.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Sunset Kelly, how'd we do? Good.
Did all right. We're about an hour.
Hey, Brett. Thank you, man. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Bye, guys.